Have you ever just stopped and wondered, what is actually going on inside my head? It's a huge question, and for centuries, some of the smartest people on the planet have been trying to draw a map of the human mind, leading to this fascinating and honestly sometimes fierce debate. Today, we're going to explore that very map. We're going to chart the course of how we tried to understand ourselves.
And really, it all boils down to this one massive challenge. I mean, how do you study something you can't see, you can't touch, or you can't really measure? The mind is totally invisible, right? So how in the world do you turn that into a science? This single problem is what kicked off a whole series of brilliant and totally different answers. So here's the journey we're about to take. We're going to start with the very first attempt to break consciousness down into tiny little pieces. Then we'll dive deep into the hidden world of the unconscious mind. After that, we'll see how some thinkers just threw the whole idea of the mind out the window, while others said, no, you have to look at the whole person. And finally, we'll zoom out and look beyond the West to see how ancient traditions have been mapping the mind for literally thousands of years. Okay, so our story kicks off way back in the late 1800s. This is the first real organized attempt to make psychology a formal science. And their goal? Well, it was incredibly ambitious. They wanted to create an anatomy of the mind itself. The thinking here with this first school called structuralism was kind of like chemistry. You know how chemistry has a periodic table of elements that make up everything? Well, they thought maybe consciousness is the same. Maybe we can break it down into its fundamental building blocks. What are the absolute simplest components of a thought or a feeling? But how on earth do you do that? Well, this guy, Wilhelm Wundt, set up the world's very first psychology lab to find out, and his method was something called introspection. He would train people to be really, really meticulous, to report on every single thing happening in their conscious experience, every sight, every feeling, every tiny thought, as objectively as they possibly could, moment by moment. But of course, no big idea goes unchallenged. Almost immediately, a huge debate started. A new school of thought called functionalism popped up, and they argued that breaking the mind into little pieces was totally missing the point. They ask a different question, not what are the parts of the mind, but what does the mind do? What's its purpose? What's the function of all our thoughts and feelings? So while those two groups were busy arguing, a doctor over in Vienna was about to propose an idea that would just change everything. He basically said that the most important parts of our mind aren't even the ones we're aware of. And that doctor was, of course, Sigmund Freud. His huge idea, psychoanalysis, was that we are driven by these powerful urges, fears, and memories that are completely hidden from us, down in the unconscious. He believed that to really get why people do what they do, you had to dig way, way below the surface. So, if this whole world is hidden, how do you get a peek inside? Well, for Freud, the clues were all around us, in the little things we overlook. He famously said that dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. But it wasn't just dreams. He thought our slips of the tongue, our anxieties, even our jokes, they were all little breadcrumbs leading back to what was really going on underneath. Freud imagined our personality as this constant, raging battle between three forces. You've got the id, which is like the little devil on your shoulder. All it wants is immediate pleasure. Then there's the superego, the angel on your other shoulder, our moral conscience. And stuck right in the middle is the ego, the part of us that has to look at reality and try to find a compromise between these two. Now, Freud's ideas were absolutely revolutionary, but a lot of people found them, well, pretty unscientific. I mean, you can't see or prove an id, right? And this frustration led to the next major shift, a school that decided to just throw out the study of the mind completely. The behaviorists came in with a simple but radical rule. If you can't see it and you can't measure it, it has no place in psychology. So forget consciousness, forget the unconscious. The only thing that mattered was behavior you could actually observe. A stimulus comes in from the environment, and a response comes out. That's it. This quote from John B. Watson, one of the founders, just says it all. For a behaviorist like him and B.F. Skinner, the goal of psychology was simple: predict and control behavior. They believed our actions are shaped entirely by our environment and the things we learn. And this idea is everywhere today, right? Think about how a social media app uses notifications to get you to come back, or how a loyalty card rewards you to keep you shopping. That's behaviorism in action. Okay, so now we've got these two very different, very powerful views. You have psychoanalysis, digging for hidden desires, and you have behaviorism, only looking at outward actions. The next wave of thinkers came along and said, you're both missing something really essential about being human.
So over in Germany, Gestalt psychology emerged, and it was a direct challenge to that old idea of breaking things down into parts. They argued that our brains are naturally wired to see patterns, to see unified wholes. Their famous motto was, "The whole is more than the sum of its parts." And this is the perfect example. When you look at this, you don't see a random collection of dots, do you? Of course not. Your mind instantly organizes them, and you perceive the letters O and B on a line. The whole image is something totally different and way more meaningful than just its individual parts. Around the same time, another movement started, and it became known as the third force. Humanists like Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers felt that both psychoanalysis and behaviorism were just too negative and pessimistic. So they put the focus back on human goodness, on our free will to make choices, and on this incredible innate drive we all have to grow and become our best selves. Now, it's really crucial that we pause here and remember that this whole debate we've talked about so far, it all happened in the West. But for thousands of years, Eastern traditions have been developing their own incredibly sophisticated psychologies. And a lot of the time, the goals are just fundamentally different. Where Western psychology has often focused on analyzing the mind to fix problems or cure dysfunction, many Eastern systems are aimed at directly training our awareness for inner transformation, for achieving something like enlightenment or spiritual freedom. For instance, some Hindu traditions see the self as a series of 5 layers, or sheaths, called the koshas. Think of it just like one of those Russian nesting dolls. The outermost doll is the physical body. And the whole journey of self-discovery is about moving inward through each layer, from your body to your life force energy, to your mind, to your intellect, to finally reach that innermost core, which is pure bliss. In a similar way, Buddhism offers this really profound psychological framework. It starts like a doctor's visit. First, the diagnosis. Life involves suffering. Second, the cause of that suffering, our own craving and attachment. Third, the prognosis. Good news, the suffering can end. And finally, the prescription, the Eightfold Path, which is a practical guide for how to actually do it. So, after this incredible whirlwind tour through all these different maps of the mind, what do we do with all this? The best way to think about it isn't which one is right and which one is wrong. It's better to see it as a collection of different tools in a toolkit. Think about it like this. Structuralism gave us the courage to even try to study the mind with science. Psychoanalysis is a tool that helps us see how our past is still alive in our present. Behaviorism gives us practical ways to change our habits. Humanism and Gestalt remind us that we have choices and that the big picture matters. And Eastern thought offers these ancient, powerful methods for actually training our minds. Every single one of these schools gives us a unique, powerful lens to look through. They don't cancel each other out. They're just different ways of trying to understand the most complex thing in the known universe, the human mind. So the real question isn't which one is right. The real question is for you, as you think about your own life, your own experiences, which one of these lenses helps you see yourself a little more clearly?